Big thanks to Dulaxi for sponsoring this deep dive, to Twice Dark's new album, Telekinetic. We get a lot of requests to cover music here, but there's something about this album that's got everyone buzzing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Twice Dark, for those who haven't heard of them yet, is the solo project of Josh Kreuzman, based out of Bloomington, Indiana. And Telekinetic is making waves, especially in the darkwave scene.
Okay, so before we get swept away by the music, set the scene for us. What is it about Twice Dark that's grabbing people's attention?
Well, one thing that makes Twice Dark stand out is Kreuzman's own musical journey. This isn't some overnight success story. He's been around cutting his teeth in punk bands in the early 90s, then shifting to indie rock, and now he's landed in this dark electronic world. You can almost hear echoes of those earlier genres in his music, giving it a depth that's really compelling.
So it's like all those influences are converging in Telekinetic. Is that what gives it such a unique sound?
It's definitely part of it. But Telekinetic doesn't fit neatly into any one box. Think goth industrial EBM. That's electronic body music, by the way, super high energy and often with a harder, almost metallic edge. But then you've also got touches of Italo disco, which is known for those super catchy melodies, and even some death rock and cold wave, which are subgenres that emphasize, well, the darker, more melancholic side of things.
Wow. That is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, he manages to squeeze in some synth pop.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about this album. It's like Kreuzman has taken all these different influences and woven them into this sonic tapestry, creating something that feels both familiar and completely fresh.
So we've got the sonic landscape, but what about the content itself? What themes is Twice Dark exploring in Telekinetic?
Well, the album's title might give you a clue. There's this recurring theme of extrasensory perception, but not in a literal, I can bend spoons with my mind kind of way.
Yeah.
It's more about exploring those feelings and experiences that we can't always explain, those moments where we sense something beyond the physical world.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
It's like using Telekinetic as a metaphor for exploring our inner worlds, those deeper levels of consciousness.
You got it. And this plays out in some really interesting ways lyrically. It's not preachy or overly literal. It's more about creating a mood, an atmosphere, a space for the listener to contemplate these ideas.
Okay, I'm already hooked. Where should we start? What's the track that draws us into this world of Twice Dark?
Night Shifts is the perfect entry point. Think rain-slicked streets, glowing city lights at night, that sort of melancholic urban vibe. Musically, it's got that classic darkwave sound with layers of synths creating this shimmering, almost hypnotic texture.
Oh, I can already hear it. Those synths are such a signature element of darkwave, aren't they?
Yeah.
But what are the vocals? How does Kreuzman's voice fit into all of this?
Well, in Night Shifts specifically, it's like his voice is another instrument blending in seamlessly with the music. It's ethereal, haunting, and strangely calming, almost like a guide through this nocturnal world he's created.
Interesting. It sounds like he's not trying to overpower the music with his voice, but rather letting it become part of the texture, part of the overall atmosphere. I love that.
Me too. It's a very intentional choice, and it really works. Now, if Night Shifts sets the mood, then Invisible Man is where we start to see the album's dynamism. This track has a driving rhythm, a real energy to it, but it also maintains that introspective quality we were talking about.
Oh, I'm curious about this one. What's going on lyrically in Invisible Man? Does it tie into this theme of perception we were discussing?
Absolutely. One line that really stands out is, "Write your name into the sand." It's this poignant image, right? You try to leave your mark, but the tide comes in and washes it away.
Wow. Yeah. That really speaks to that sense of impermanence and maybe even the futility of trying to hold on to things. It's a bit melancholic, but also beautiful in a way.
Exactly. It's that bittersweet quality that Twice Dark does so well. And musically, Invisible Man highlights the range of this album. We've got the driving rhythm, but also these moments of introspection, these washes of synths that create this almost otherworldly feeling.
Okay, so we've got the melancholic beauty of Night Shifts, the driving energy of Invisible Man. But where does Twice Dark take us next? Give us another taste of this sonic journey.
Well, next up, we have Time Traveler, which is, as you might guess, all about the concept of time. But it's not a straightforward linear journey. Musically, it's got this pulsating bass line that really pulls you in these shimmering synths that create this sense of movement, and then Kreuzman's vocals soaring over it all like he's guiding us through these fragmented memories.
Okay, Time Traveler officially goes on my must-listen list.
Yeah.
This idea of time being fragmented, non-linear, that resonates with me. It's like how our memories work, right? They're not always in chronological order. They're these flashes, these impressions that come back to us in unexpected ways.
Exactly. And I think that's what Kreuzman is trying to capture in this song. It's not about a literal journey through time. It's about the way our minds experience time, the way memories shape our present.
I love that. It's like he's using music to map out the inner landscape of our minds, our experience of time.
Precisely. And speaking of mapping out landscapes, we can't forget about the title track, Telekinetic. This is where everything comes together. We've got the eerie hypnotic tone, Kreuzman's spectral vocals, and the instrumentation builds and swells, creating this feeling of being suspended between reality and something else entirely.
Okay, so it sounds like Telekinetic, the song, embodies the overall theme of the album. It's like he's taking us to the heart of this exploration of extrasensory perception, using music to create this experience that's beyond words.
You got it. And I think that's what makes this album so compelling. It's not just about listening to music. It's about feeling something, experiencing something, and maybe even questioning our own perceptions of reality.
So it's not just an album.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to think differently, to feel more deeply. I love that.
Absolutely. No, I know we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to explore in Telekinetic, from the production details to the nuances of the lyrics.
Well, luckily for us, this is a deep dive, and we have plenty of time to uncover all those layers.
Indeed. And in part 2, we'll do just that. We'll talk about the collaborators who helped bring this album to life, and we'll dissect some of those production choices that make Telekinetic sound so unique. Welcome back to our deep dive into Twice Dark's Telekinetic. You know, one thing that struck me when I first listened to this album was the production. It's so crisp and modern, but it still manages to capture that classic darkwave sound. It's not an easy balance to strike.
It really isn't. I was thinking the same thing. It doesn't feel like a throwback, like someone trying to imitate a bygone era. It's fresh, while still being deeply rooted in the sounds that define darkwave. How does Kreuzman pull that off?
Well, I think it comes down to a couple of things. First, there's Kreuzman's own evolution as a musician. Remember, he started in punk, then moved to indie rock before landing in this dark electronic world. So he's not afraid to experiment, to blend genres and influences.
Right. It's like he's bringing all those experiences to bear on this album, giving it a depth and richness that you might not find in a band that's just sticking to one specific sound.
Exactly. And then there's the collaboration aspect. Kreuzman worked with Postal Recording in Indianapolis, and they clearly have a great understanding of how to capture both the raw energy and the nuanced textures of this kind of music.
I was wondering about that. I read that there were a bunch of other performers and remixers involved as well.
Yeah.
It seems like Kreuzman is really open to collaboration, letting other artists contribute to the overall sound of the album.
It's definitely a collaborative effort, and I think that's one of the things that makes Telekinetic so vibrant. You've got all these different creative voices coming together, adding their own unique touches to the music.
Okay, so we've talked about the production, the collaboration, but what about the songs themselves? You know, part 1, we touched on Night Shifts, Invisible Man, and Time Traveler. What other tracks on this album are you really drawn to?
Well, one that comes to mind is Fractured Dreams. This one leans more into the industrial side of things with these distorted synths and a heavy driving beat.
Oh, interesting. So we're getting a bit heavier, a bit more intense with this one.
Yeah, definitely. But it's not just about the sonic assault. Lyrically, Fractured Dreams is really interesting. It deals with this idea of memory being unreliable, how our perceptions of the past can be distorted over time.
Ooh, I like that. It connects back to that theme of perception we were talking about earlier, like how Telekinetic is about exploring those unseen forces that shape our lives, whether it's our own memories or something beyond our understanding.
Exactly. It's like Kreuzman is saying, don't always trust what you remember. The past is fluid, it's always changing. And the music reflects that with these sudden shifts in tempo and tone, these moments where the sound just seems to break apart and reform.
Wow, that's brilliant. It's like the music itself is mimicking the fracturing of memories. That sense of disorientation we can feel when we're trying to piece together the past. I'm going to have to listen to that one again with that in mind.
You should. It's a really layered track, both musically and lyrically. And speaking of layers, another one that I think deserves a shout out is Echoes in the Static.
That title is so evocative, I'm already intrigued. What's special about this one?
Well, it's a bit of a departure from some of the other tracks on the album. It's slower, more introspective, with these beautiful, almost ambient textures.
Okay, so it's like we're shifting gears a bit, moving from that industrial intensity to something more atmospheric, more dreamlike.
Exactly. And the lyrics in Echoes in the Static are some of the most personal on the album. I think Kreuzman talks about feeling lost, searching for meaning in a world that feels chaotic and overwhelming.
That's something I think a lot of people can relate to, especially these days. There's so much noise, so much information coming at us all the time. It's easy to feel like you're drowning in it all.
It really is. And I think Echoes in the Static captures that feeling perfectly. But there's also a sense of hope in the song, this idea that even in the midst of all the static, there are these moments of clarity, these glimpses of beauty and connection.
It's like those moments when everything just clicks, when you feel a sense of peace and understanding, even if it's fleeting. It's those moments that keep us going right.
They really do. And Echoes in the Static is like a sonic reminder of a way of finding solace in the midst of the chaos.
I love that. It's like this album is taking us on a journey through all these different states of being, from the melancholic beauty of night shifts to the industrial intensity of fractured dreams to the quiet hopefulness of Echoes in the Static.
And we haven't even talked about the title track yet. Telekinetic is where everything comes together. It's the culmination of all these themes and ideas we've been discussing.
Okay, I'm ready. Take us to the heart of it all. What makes Telekinetic the title track, the centerpiece of this sonic exploration?
Well, sonically, it's the most experimental track on the album. It's got this eerie, otherworldly quality with these layers of swirling synths, distorted vocals, and a rhythm that's both hypnotic and unsettling. It's like being pulled into another dimension.
Ooh, that sounds intense. And lyrically, what's going on in Telekinetic? Does it tie into this idea of extrasensory perception of those unseen forces shaping our lives?
Absolutely. In Telekinetic, Kreuzman seems to be exploring the idea that our thoughts and emotions have power, that they can influence the world around us in ways we might not fully understand.
So it's like he's saying that we're not just passive observers, that our minds are actively shaping our reality.
Exactly. And it's a bit of a mind-bending concept, right? But the music really drives it home. It's like you're feeling those unseen forces at work, that sense of energy and potential that exists within our own minds.
Okay, I'm officially hooked on this album. I need to hear Telekinetic for myself.
You definitely do. It's a powerful track, one that stays with you long after the music stops. And in a way, it sums up what Twice Dark is all about. It's about pushing boundaries, exploring the unknown, and using music to tap into those deeper levels of consciousness.
So it's not just about listening to music. It's about having an experience, about connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Precisely. And that's what makes Telekinetic such a remarkable album.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of Twice Dark's Telekinetic. And, in parts 1 and 2, we've talked about the sound, the production, the influences, but I'm really excited to dig into the lyrics now.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where the real magic of this album lies.
I agree. The lyrics are what elevate Telekinetic from a collection of cool songs to a truly immersive experience. They're poetic, evocative, and they invite the listener to participate in the meaning-making.
Yes, it's not like he's hitting us over the head with a message. It's more like these subtle threads woven throughout the album, these little glimpses into Kreuzman's inner world. And as listeners, we get to piece those fragments together, create our own interpretations.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that even though the lyrics are often abstract, they deal with some very universal themes: time, memory, perception, the search for meaning. These are things we all grapple with on some level.
Okay, so let's unpack some of those things we talked about night shifts earlier.
Yeah.
And how it evokes this sense of longing, almost nostalgia for a time and place that maybe only exists in memory. What other lyrics on the album stand out to you in terms of exploring these themes?
Well, in Invisible Man, there's that line we mentioned before, write your name into the sand. It's such a powerful image, and I think it speaks to this desire we all have to leave our mark on the world to make a difference, even though we know deep down that everything is temporary.
It's that tension between wanting to be remembered to connect with others and knowing that ultimately everything fades away. It's a pretty profound theme to tackle, especially in a genre that's often associated with darkness and despair.
It is, but I think Telekinetic, the album as a whole, offers a different perspective on darkness. It's not about wallowing in negativity. It's about exploring those darker corners of our minds and hearts, those places where fear and doubt reside, but also where creativity and introspection can flourish.
Yes, it's like he's saying, embrace the darkness, explore the shadows, because that's where you'll find the real depth, the real beauty.
Exactly, and in Time Traveler, the lyrics are even more fragmented, dreamlike. It's like we're getting these glimpses into Kreuzman's memories, but they're not linear, they're not straightforward. It's more about capturing the feeling, the essence of those memories.
Which makes sense, right? Our memories aren't perfect recordings. They're colored by our emotions. Our perceptions, they shift and change over time. It's like Kreuzman is acknowledging that and embracing the subjective nature of memory.
Yes, and musically, Time Traveler reflects that with those sudden shifts in tempo and tone, those moments where the music seems to break apart and reform. It's like sonic representation of the way our minds piece together the past.
I love that it's like he's using music to create a map of our inner landscapes, those hidden pathways of memory and perception. And speaking of maps, we can't forget about the title track, Telekinetic. We've talked about how sonically it's the most experimental track on the album, but what about the lyrics? What's Kreuzman exploring in that song?
Well, in Telekinetic, I think he's taking this idea of perception to another level. He's not just talking about how our minds shape our understanding of the world. He's suggesting that our thoughts and emotions have a power and energy that can actually influence the world around us.
Ooh, that's getting into some pretty heady territory. It's almost like he's tapping into that ancient wisdom that says, what you focus on expands, that our thoughts create a reality. Is that too far out there?
Maybe, but that's the beauty of this album. It invites us to question our assumptions, to explore those bigger questions about consciousness and the nature of reality. It's not about giving us easy answers. It's about provoking us to think differently, to feel more deeply.
And in a world that's often so focused on the material, on the tangible, it's a powerful gift. It's a reminder that there's so much more to life than what we can see and touch.
Exactly. Telekinetic is an invitation to tune into those subtler frequencies, those unseen forces that connect us all. It's about opening ourselves up to the mystery, to the possibility that there's more to this world than we can currently imagine.
So what does it all mean? Why should we care about this album, about these themes that Kreuzman is exploring?
Well, I think on one level, Telekinetic is a reminder that music can be more than just entertainment. It can be a source of comfort, a tool for introspection, a way of connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
And in a world that's often so chaotic and overwhelming, that's a precious gift. It's a reminder that we have the power to create our own meaning, to find beauty and solace even in the darkest of times.
Absolutely, and that's what makes Telekinetic such a special album. It's not just music, it's an experience, a journey into the heart of what it means to be human.
Beautifully said. So to wrap things up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive into Twice Dark's Telekinetic?
I think the takeaway is simple. Go listen to this album. Let the music wash over. You let the lyrics seep into your subconscious and see what resonates with you. What stories do you hear? What emotions does it evoke? What questions does it raise for you?
Yes, Telekinetic is an album that demands to be experienced, not just heard. It's an invitation to explore, to question, to feel deeply. And I think that's something we could all use a little more of in our lives. So big thanks to Dulaxi for sponsoring this deep dive. And until next time, happy listening.